And we're live! Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Morning Dungeon. I'm your host, as usual, Dungeon Master Vibe. So today, it's time we're going to do another class review. Actually, I had a lot of fun last time we did one of these with the Artificer, so I think I'm going to keep doing them. I figured we'd just go in alphabetical since we start with the Artificer. And so that means today, we're going to be looking at what I think, at least as far as circles I played with, maybe a little underused class, which is the Bard. So, hopping right into things, if you do not know, the Bard is a full support caster with a lot of utility, I would say. As far as the full casters go, the Bard is one of several that uses Charisma as their spellcasting skill, with the others being the Warlock and Sorcerer, as well as the half-caster, the Paladin. Sorry, need a drink. Now, generally speaking, I don't mean they're underused, in fact that they are bad anyways, or overlooked. I just mean, within my personal circle of those who I have played this game with, I must admit, I myself have never played a Bard, and so most of my view here is going to be simply based off of what I am able to read from the books here, and give my overall opinion on things I've seen there. Then as far as playing with people who have done Bards, that's also been rather minimal, as one of the most prominent Bards in the settings I've played in have actually been NPC characters, who certainly show off that the Bards have a lot of fun to be had, but just simply not one that too many people in my personal circle kind of go for. Now then, the Bard itself, sort of lore-wise, is a magic caster whose magic comes from not necessarily knowledge of the arcane or borrowing their power from some extra-dimensional force, but rather is a caster whose magic comes from their ability to perform and wow. A lot of that tends to be a lot of times when it comes to such a thing, things like Fae comes to mind, being very like sort of free-spirited, kind of wild type creatures. So a lot of times there might be a little bit of that sort of flair scene, things like satyrs come to mind. But in general though, the Bard is essentially like an entertainer who's taken up the life of adventuring. So one particular example might be, if you're a fan of the Witcher series, characters such as Jaskier, it would be definitely considered a Bard, though in that show he is not magical by any means. But yeah, he is the character who follows around a Witcher as well as other adventurers, creating and weaving intricate stories and songs about their adventures. And that is who a Bard is in D&D, one who does not only is able to tell those stories and sing those songs, but is able to show the true might of said adventurers through the use of magic, channeled by the telling of these glories. Now then, as far as the forecasters go, the Bard shares more similarities to something like a sorcerer, I would say, as opposed to something like a wizard, who is more of a learned magic type situation. The Bard is more of an innate knowledge when it comes to their spells. When you're looking at the spell list, you'll see that they actually, as opposed to learning their spells like wizards and some other casters do, they instead have a strict number of spells known, with those spells being 4 at level 1, and by the time you're maxing out at level 20, you're looking at 22 spells. And just like any other forecaster, they do eventually gain access to even 9th level spells, with a number of spells even unique to the class. Now then, as far as your forecasters go, I'd say the Bard is a bit beefier, as they do gain access to a D8 for their hit die, as well as they start out with light armor proficiency, and some decent weapon options as well, starting with all simple weapons, hand crossbows, longswords, rapiers, and short swords. You'll definitely be able to see the reason why for that as I continue on here. They start out with tools. They gain proficiency with 3 musical instruments of your choice. And of course, as I mentioned, the Bards are predominantly casters who use song and story to cast those spells. And as such, for your tool proficiencies, you gain access to various instruments. Now, in saving throws, dexterity and charisma are of course the ones of choice. And then for your skills, you are allowed to choose any 3 skills. Now this is where the board gets interesting. You'll find in that as we go on here, you'll find the board is a very utility heavy caster. They're very mobile, and they will do any number of things. Essentially, I would say as far as they are the rogues of the casters, not to be confused with the Arcane Trickster rogue, who is a half caster. Now, the reason I say this, and once again, you'll see it very well once we kind of go into the abilities and such, the board as a support doesn't quite play like a cleric, who tends to be a bit of a tankier support, able to just kind of sit in the back line and do what they need to do, or at times even go to the front line and provide that support. The board plays more like the rogue, constantly running around the battlefield and giving various types of buffs and hit points to just ensure the rest of the party is able to give that extra little oomph to really take out the enemy. Or, if it's not an enemy, sneak around. Give a little, a little wave of the fingers, strum of the guitar, and suddenly your barbarian is a lot more charming than he was a few seconds ago, and nobody seems to know why. The board is excellent at really filling any, in social situations, the board is able to fill any situation. If anything, I'd say that might be one reason why you don't see a lot of people in my personal group playing the board, is because when it comes down to it, a lot of people like to really go in for combat. Not to say that people who do that don't like the OP, but the OP is a very heavy aspect of the board. With what they are doing outside of combat, pretty much an equal and heavy role of the board as their in combat status. Case in point being the fact that they can take, at level 1, they get their proficiency in any 3 skills of their choice. So essentially, they're not only able to fill any support role within combat, but supportive roles outside of combat as well. Basically, they're the best wingman in D&D. Assuming they're not, stealing all the ladies and guys. Now then, moving on here. As far as, let's see, as far as their spells go, as I said, they use Charisma as their primary modifier, which is typically the case of most of the, I guess you could say, gimmicky kind of casters. Not gimmicky in a bad way, it's just they have a very specific gimmick, boards, music and stories is how they cast those spells. Warlocks, they borrow the magic from some terrible, horrible, scary eldritch entity or the otherworldly being. Sorcerers are basically mutants from X-Men. And all those are charisma casters. So, that's what I mean when I say gimmicky casters use charisma. Obviously, it makes perfect sense in the case of the board. Now then, after the spell casting, the first ability the board gains access to, which is sort of the big thing with their class, and this ability actually changes somewhat, I believe, with some of the various subclasses we'll be looking into as well. There are a lot of board subclasses. The Artificer, we hit them all because there were only 4 as a brand new class. We'll kind of be sticking to, so we won't be looking at all the subclasses, but we will be looking at the subclasses listed in the Player Handbook and Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So we'll be starting with all the core abilities of the board, and then the subclasses in the PHB, and then we'll be moving on to Xanathar's Guide. So, as I said, the first ability the board gets is Bardic Inspiration. With Bardic Inspiration, you can inspire others through stirring words or music. To do so, use a bonus action on your turn to choose one creature other than yourself within 60 feet of you who can hear you. That creature gains 1 Bardic Inspiration die, which is a D6. Once within the next 10 minutes, the creature can roll the die and add the number roll to one ability check, attack roll, or saving throw it makes. The creature can wait until after it rolls the D20 before deciding to use the Bardic Inspiration die, but must decide before the DM says whether the roll succeeds or fails. Once the die is rolled, it is lost. The creature can have only 1 Bardic Inspiration die at a time. the board is able to use this feature number of times equal to their charisma modifier. And they would gain all of them when finishing a long rest. Additionally, at higher levels, the die becomes a D8 at 5th level, a D10 at 10th level, and a D12 at 15th. So essentially, this is sort of, now then, if you're familiar with some of the optional rules in D&D, there is the inspiration system. Basically, this is a way for the DM to reward players for particularly good moves or good OP. The DM can decide to reward an inspiration point, which is essentially a single point a character can hold that allows them advantage on basically any roll. And so you get the bard, who is able to just basically at will gift somebody this die. Though this is unlike the DM's inspiration, it is not strict advantage. It is a rolled die of a bonus. As I said, starting at a D6 and so on and so forth. Now, being able to gain this die is one of the board's most important abilities, I dare say, as it is something that is extremely useful, once again, both in and out of combat. In combat, to ensure that they're making their saves or hitting the enemy consistently, and out of combat, ensuring some of the less charismatic characters are able to succeed on those persuasion checks or intimidation checks, or the particularly loud paladin is able to be stealthy despite himself. So with that, the bard is once again able to provide excellent support in any role of the game. Now then, additionally, the bard gains access to Jack of all trades. Now here's a big point towards the bard basically being the rogues of the casters, is the rogue also gets this ability, though I believe it is actually called something different for the rogue. We'll get to that later, once we review the rogue though. So starting at 2nd level, you can add half your proficiency bonus rounded down to any ability check you make that doesn't already include your proficiency bonus. Okay, so that is actually different. So with the rogue, I believe what they gain is expertise, which is they choose a couple of their proficient skills and they get to double the modifier. Now with Jack of all trades, the bard is able to add half the proficiency bonus to all ability checks that they are not proficient in. Meaning the rogue is, just as the name says, a jack of all trades when once in and out of combat. Able to basically fill any needed role, be anyone they need to be. With that in mind, as far as like your sort of ideas for playing bards, something like a gambler or a spy are some really cool ideas for bards. You know, I see a lot of people actually do that with the few cases where we have had bards in the party. They've usually been some sort of charlatan or a spy of some sort. And both times they've been rather interesting characters, I gotta say. Now, the next ability they gain is at level 3. They obtain expertise. You choose to view skill proficiencies, and your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check you make that uses either of the chosen proficiencies. Okay, now see, that's the ability I was thinking of, expertise. That's rogues get this ability as well. Though I believe the rogues actually are able to pick a few more skills, if I recall correctly. Let's see, then at level 15, Font of Inspiration. Beginning when you reach 5th level, you regain all of your expended use of Bardic Inspiration when you finish a short or long rest. So basically this just, as soon as you hit 5th level, you're now doing those inspiration points even more often, as you no longer require a long rest to do them. You get them back after a short rest, which really bumps up their utility. Actually, with that in mind, let me check something real quick. Yeah, okay. Yeah, bards are a caster that only regain the spell slots at a long rest, though. So, but that is an interesting point, is even if they've expended all those spell slots, they still regain some of their utility options even after a short rest. So even if they're not casting spells, they can still do their inspiration and some of their other abilities. Now then, at level 16, they gain Counter Charm. They gain the ability to use musical notes or words to power to disrupt mind-influencing effects. As an action, you can start a performance that lasts until the end of your next turn. During that time, you and any friendly creature within 30 feet of you have advantage on saving throws against being frightened or charmed. The creature must be able to hear you to gain this benefit. The performance ends early if you are incapacitated or silenced, or if you voluntarily end it. No action required. So basically, what this is the bard is using their loud stories or songs to essentially drown out the voices of those charming effects, keeping your friends from being able to be charmed. Honestly, I will say it's not a bad ability, but considering you do need to use an action to do it, and it's a bit more of a limited skill, I'd say. It's you really need to be in a situation where you know that there's going to be, some powerful charm effects going on, or just a bunch of people with access to charm effects to do it. Now, some good examples might be situations where you're up against a lot of like Fays or Fiends, but once again, still a bit more specific scenarios in which you'd be doing this, especially since, given the wording of it, it's not exactly a subtle thing. It's a bit loud, especially considering one of the conditions for it being cancelled is the silenced spell, or I would say any general thing that would make you unable to speak or make noise. So with that in mind, it's not exactly a subtle thing either, unlike some of the other board abilities, which I would say do have room to be sort of worded into something a bit more subtle. Level 10, they gain Magical Secrets. So with Magical Secrets, you choose 2 spells from any class, including this one. A spell you choose must be of a level you can cast, as shown on the board table, or a cantrip. The chosen spells count as board spells for you and are included in the number of spells column of the board table. You can learn 2 additional spells from any class at 14th level and again at 18th. So with this ability, the bard, who is already a jack of all trades as far as ability checks go, is now a jack of all trades caster as well, as they gain, as I just said, they can gain, by the time they are done, they're maxing out their levels. They have learned up to 6 spells from any class. Now, keeping in mind, at level 18, you have already gained access to level 9 spells. So you can even gain some of those super powerful 9th level healing and resurrection from, like, say, a cleric, or just straight up destructive spells of a wizard. Like, you gain access to some of the strongest spells in the game as a class that otherwise wouldn't even have included in the spell list. Definitely not an ability you should be overlooking or thinking too little of. Now, as I said, it does include those spells in the spells known column. So that is something you keep in mind, is when you're choosing your spells for the class where you gained it, those number of spells known is with that ability in mind. So level 10, you're going from... I'm looking at the wrong table. You're going from 12 to 14. Those 2 new spells are those 2 spells you can learn from any ability. So you're not running 2 spells and then 2 spells from any class. That's something very important to keep in mind to make sure you're not breaking any rules. And now we come to the final ability, the level 20 ability, Superior Inspiration. When you roll initiative and have no use of Bardic Inspiration left, you regain 1 use. I'm going to admit, as far as the level 20 ability goes, I think this one kind of sucks. It's super underwhelming, especially considering some of the other abilities and spells the bard has access to, and it's really not even that good. So this is assuming you're going into the fight with no Bardic Inspiration left. And under that condition, you get 1. You get 1 use back. Now, I could understand if maybe you rolled a dice for a number of uses back, or maybe you get all the uses back. You're level 20, I mean, come on. And considering this would likely be after a short rest, seeing as though you have spent, well, actually, no, probably not even after a short rest, because you've spent all of them. But still, it's like, you have access to those spells, yes. But you're only getting 1 thing, and you spend all that time hitting level 20, and this is what you get. I have to admit, a bit of a letdown, but also, to be frank, a lot of the level 20 abilities, I feel like are abilities that, like, aren't super big uses anyways, and to be frank, most games are over by the time you hit level 20 anyhow. So you're probably talking like 1, maybe 2 sessions, like 3 tops, I'd say, of being level 20 before the campaign's probably over. So with that in mind, I'd say forgivable, but, you know, I feel like just a little not so great, you know? So in any case, let's get into these subclasses. Now then, the standard subclasses, as introduced in the Player Handbook, are the College of Lore and the College of Valor. So boards subclasses are broken up into different colleges. Basically, these are the different sort of all groups and societies who teach and learn the particular arts of a bard, be it song, storytelling, or other types of things. Generally speaking, in PHP, it's very much implied that the bard is a singer or storyteller. It's like basically just those two. I would say for the most part. You can definitely, of course, word the bard to be just about anything: a dancer, a painter, lots of stuff like that. But for the most part, I would say, given the subclasses in the PHP, it's implied that they are a singer or a song or a storyteller. But as you will see in Xanathar's Guide for sure, they branch that out and into more things such as dancing, sword juggling, and all sorts of stuff like that. It definitely branches out the types of performing arts your bard could be doing. But of course, quick little conversation with the DM, and you could definitely kind of make it into any sort of performer you like. As I was saying, we start out with the College of Lore. College of Lore are known about what's it difficult? It's early in the morning. I've been up for like maybe an hour. Bards at College of Lore know something about most things, collecting bits of knowledge from sources as diverse and as scholarly tomes as peasant tales. Whether singing folk ballads in taverns or elaborate compositions in royal courts, these bards use their gifts to hold audience spellbound. Anywho, so basically, the College of Lore, you are a bard who is very well learned. You know, as it says, you know things about most things. You've heard countless tales and songs, but not just heard the tales and songs. You've studied these tales and songs. You know what they truly mean. The mean and the lore repercussions of said tales. So with these bards are very heavy on using their words for fighting. And that definitely comes into play with their first ability they gain at level 3, Cutting Words. So at level 3, you use Cutting Words. You learn how to use your wit to distract, confuse, and otherwise sap the confidence and competence of others. When a creature that you can see within 60 feet of you makes an attack roll, ability check, or a damage roll, you can use your reaction to expend one of your Bardic Inspiration, rolling a Bardic Inspiration die, and subtracting the number rolled from the creature's roll. You can choose to use this feature after the creature makes its roll, but before the DM determines whether the attack roll or ability check succeeds or fails, or before the creature deals its damage. The creature is immune if it can't hear you, or if it's immune to being charmed. So basically, with the College of Lore, you gain a reverse Bardic Inspiration. You can now not only use Bardic Inspiration on your allies, but you can use it on your enemies to subtract their rolls. This is similar to some other reaction abilities that you might find with a few other classes. And to be frank, I always like these abilities. I love reaction abilities. They're always very fun, and they make, in my opinion, combat much more interesting, as it really kind of breaks up the action and turn economy, you know, as you're not just making rolls on your turn, but on enemies' turns as well. Really mixes things up. Now, I know I was kind of ragging on the level 20 ability, but with this particular one, I would say this is a case of it being decent to get a die back, seeing as though that one reaction of Cutting Words could be pretty big in a high level fight. especially seeing as though at that point you're using D12s as your Bardic Inspiration die. Now then, at level 6, they gain additional magical secrets. You learn 2 spells of your choice from any class, and a spell you choose must be a level you can cast. The chosen spells count as bard spells for you, but don't count against the number of bard spells you know. Now see, this is different from our base ability magical secrets. So the regular magical secrets gained as a bard, that is part of your learned bard spells. So you basically, when you're running your 2 new spells at level 10, you gain, that is just the 2 new spells can be from any class. With additional magical secrets at level 6, you learn 2 additional spells from any class, and they do not count towards your number of spells known. So the Lore Bard actually will end up having a wider selection of spells than other bards, something to keep in mind. However, they gain this ability at level 6, so very early on, and they do not gain additional spells from this ability. So with that in mind, they can't quite gain as many high-level spells, but still at an early level having some additional healing or AoE buffs, still pretty big. And the final ability at level 14 is Peerless Skill. When you make an ability check, you can expend 1 use of Bardic Inspiration, roll Bardic Inspiration die, and add the number rolled to your ability check. You can choose to do so after you roll the die for the ability check, but before the DM tells you whether you succeed or roll. So basically with this, the Guards of Lore Bard is able to use inspiration on themselves whenever. They don't have to use their action to use the Bardic Inspiration, or bonus action rather. They can simply, as part of their action, choose to use one of their dice on themselves. I would say decent ability all in all, especially if you are being used as a party's main caster. Like I say, you don't have more of an AoE type caster, then it would be definitely a good thing to have such an ability to kind of buff yourself. Throat's kind of dry. I started talking too much too early in the morning, I think. Alright, so our next one is the College of Valor. So, the College of Valor, or Bards of the College of Valor, or daring skalds whose tales keep alive the memory of the great heroes of the past and thereby inspire a new generation of heroes. These bards gather in mead halls or around great bonfires, sing the deeds of the mighty, both past and present. Now then, the College of Valor bard is a bit more of a mid to frontliner bard, I'd say, able to really kind of get in there and provide support. With that in mind, I would say their playstyle is almost closer to something like a cleric, I would say, especially some of your more heavily armored clerics, though nowhere near as tanky, I'd say. When you take this one at level 3, you gain proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. And then, you also gain combat inspiration. You learn to inspire others in battle. A creature that has a Bardic Inspiration die from you can roll the die and add the number rolled to a weapon damage roll just made. Alternatively, when an attack roll is made against the creature, you can use its reaction to roll the Bardic Inspiration die and add the number rolled to its AC against that attack. So with that in mind, this particular bard immediately becomes much more of an offensive support, with the Bardic Inspiration dies being more useful towards dealing damage and keeping your allies from getting hit. Additionally, at level 6, you gain extra attack. You are now able to attack twice when taking the attack action. So with that in mind, this is also a bard who is meant to be more of a melee combatant, as case in point with your shield and martial weapon and proficiencies, and plus that medium armor is certainly useful if you're going to be getting in there as a full caster. With that in mind, this particular bard, I like this bard. I do. It's just, it feels like almost like a dumbed down cleric to a certain degree. But considering the spell options and the utility of them, still a very good choice if you're looking for sort of like the party solo support or solo caster, I would say this is not a bad choice at all, especially if you're trying to save those spell slots if it is a party that's just kind of lacking in magical abilities. And then at level 14, you gain Battle Magic. You have mastered the art of weaving spellcasting and weapons into a single harmonious act. When you use the action cast a bard spell, you can make one weapon attack as a bonus action. So something to keep in mind with this particular bard, especially when you look at those 3 abilities, is this bard gains the most use in melee. So, my recommendation is actually to play a little less like a rogue as this one, and simply opt to go in and help an ally really just beat down a particular enemy. As soon as that enemy is done, or it seems like the other guy got it, back away from that enemy and move to the next one that an ally is fighting and start helping them with that one. With that in mind, I still do not see this as a primary damage dealer by any means, but a very good secondary attacker to provide some buffs and spells while still consistently dealing damage to your enemy. This is, like I said, a very good primary choice if your party is lacking in support or otherwise magical abilities, as they're able to not only attack and cast spells, but by doing so, they're able to preserve their number of spells as well. Now then, that does it for the boards in the player handbook. So we'll go look at a few more that were added in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. As I'm sure you've noticed, as far as the board goes in the player handbook, not a lot of options. Most classes in the base player's handbook, which of course was the original only book for 5th edition, as far as the player options go, it's a bit lacking as far as content goes. Most the other classes have at least 3 subclasses, whereas the bard only has 2. But I don't feel like that's because they didn't care as much about the bard. You can tell that they really did put a lot into it. There's a lot of flavor to be had. And I think part of it is that once you get into this bard's spell list, you will see that they are a very good, very strong caster when played right. And of course, with the Jack of all trades abilities, become amazing outside of combat as well. If you got a good role player in your group, the bard can be a fantastic addition to those more RP heavy sessions. So long as you're ensuring that, they're not stealing the spotlight. It's very important to give everyone their time to shine in this game. So, one moment. Swapping books. I am looking on a physical book as I do this, by the way. It'd probably be more efficient if I had it up on my screen, but, I like having physical copies of stuff. Now then. Now then, with the Xanathar's Guide to Everything, 3 new boards were added. College of Glamour, College of Swords, and College of Whispers. Now then, each of these do a little something different. And, just really, once again, kind of change up overall playstyle of the board. Now then, starting off with the first one, College of Glamour. College of Glamour is the home of bards who master the craft in the vibrant realm of the Feywild or under the tutelage of someone who dwelled there. Tutored by satyrs, Eladrin, and other Fey, these bards learn to use their magic to delight and captivate others. The bards of this college are regarded with a mixture of awe and fear. Their performances are the stuff of legend. These bards are so eloquent that a speech or song that one of them performs can cause captors to release the bard unharmed and can lull a furious dragon into complacency. Same magic that allows them to quell beasts can also bend minds. Fearless bards of this college can leech off a community for weeks. Misusing their magic to turn their hostile into thralls, heroic bards of this college instead use the power to gladden the downtrodden and undermine the oppressors. So, the first up ability you get with the College of Glamour is Mantle of Inspiration. When you join the College of Glamour at 3rd level, you gain the ability to weave a song of Fey magic that imbues your allies with vigor and speed. As a bonus action, you can spend one use of your Bardic Inspiration to grant yourself a wondrous appearance. When you do so, choose a number of creatures you can see and see blah blah blah. Words are difficult for me right now. I'm sorry. Just move this. Okay. You grant yourself one. When you do so, choose a number of creatures you can see and that can see you within 60 feet of you, up to a number equal to your Charisma modifier. Each of them gain 5 temporary hit points. When a creature gains these temporary hit points, it can immediately use its reaction to move up to its speed without provoking opportunity attacks. And then the number of hit points increases when you reach certain levels in the class. 8 at 5th, 11 at 10th, and 14 at 5th. Now, as far as temporary hit points go, it doesn't sound like a lot, but still, as far as temporary hit points go, even a little bit is something. There's that little bit of cushion that keeps that, that D12 of damage from knocking you unconscious. And besides that, I would say the main use of this ability isn't even those temporary hit points. In most cases, when someone provides temporary hit points, the temporary hit points are usually like just a little bonus and usually not, the real meat of the ability. The real meat of this ability is possibly having the entire party able to move without provoking opportunity. This is great for trying to escape or trying to reposition after an ambush, or simply trying to really surround a particular enemy. It is extremely useful being able to move so many people without any danger. And it honestly, as far as level 3 abilities go, I would say this one is honestly much stronger than it might initially sound. Now, of course, it is very important for the board to realize when best to use this ability, because there might be times where they choose to use this ability and everyone's really just kind of where they need to be. So communication, very important when it comes to using support abilities like this. Because be a bit of a waste to try to use it just for those temporary hit points, and then nobody wants to move. So if you're looking for some healing, this is not the spell you want to use. Save it for when it's time for people to reposition. And then just look at those temporary hit points as more of a nice little bonus. Okay, they actually gain another ability at level 3, which is Enthralling Performance. So at that level, you can charge your performance with Seductive Fey Magic. If you perform for at least 1 minute, you can attempt to inspire wonder in your audience by singing, reciting a poem, or dancing. At the end of the performance, choose a number of humanoids within 6 feet of you who watched and listened to all of it, up to a number equal to your Charisma modifier, minimum of 1. Each target must succeed on a Wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC will be charmed by you. While charmed this way, target idolizes you, it speaks glowingly of you to anyone who talks to it, and it hinders anyone who opposes you, although it avoids violence unless it was already inclined to fight on your behalf. This effect ends on target after 1 hour, if it takes any damage, if you attack it, or if it witnesses you attacking or damaging any of its allies. If target succeeds on saving throw, target has no hint that you tried to charm it. Once you use this feature, you can use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Now, this ability is very powerful for use outside of combat. This is, in my opinion, by no means a combat ability. It takes a minute to do it, which in combat, that is like 10 turns. There's no way you're doing just that for 10 turns. The fight's probably over one way or another by that point. Additionally, there's the fact that basically any type of combat action, be it you attacking them, you attacking one of their friends, somebody damaging them, any of those things break the spell. So this is not meant to be used in combat at all, but it is very powerful for outside of combat, trying to gain information, get a guy on the inside to sneak out a friend, or find a particular item that the party is after. Especially when you take into account that most charm spells, when they end, it specifies that they are now aware that they were charmed. This ability does not have that drawback. When it ends, they have no clue that anything happened. Like, none at all. So with that in mind, this ability extremely strong for your more espionage or just more social type interactions. Alright, the level 6 ability, you gain Mantle of Majesty. You, at 6th level, they gain the ability to cloak yourself in a fey magic that makes others want to serve you. As a bonus action, you cast Command without expending a spell slot, and you take on an appearance of unearthly beauty for 1 minute or until your concentration ends, as if you were concentrating on a spell. During this time, you can cast Command as a bonus action on each of your turns without expending a spell slot. Any creature charmed by you automatically fails its saving throw against the command you cast with this feature. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Now then, this one is basically the combat version of the previous ability. It doesn't last for as long, and is a bit more limited, as command is limited to, commands that are single phrase, like attack, run, flee, surrender, or kind of prime examples that people in my groups have used when using the command spell. In particular, there's the fact that this is done as you can continue to command them as a bonus action under this effect, and this is basically the use of the command spell without expending a spell slot, and it lasts for longer than the regular command spell. With that in mind, this ability is very good if you need an extra bit of muscle in a fight, in which case you're able to turn an enemy into a temporary ally. Or, at the very least, get them to just stand there and let you guys kind of walk away while they act like nothing is happening. And at level 14, they gain Unbreakable Majesty. 14th, your appearance permanently gains an otherworldly aspect that makes you look more lovely and fierce. In other words, you're level 14, you get hot. In addition, as a bonus action, you can assume a magically majestic presence for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. For the duration, whenever any creature tries to attack you for the first time on a turn, the attacker must make a charisma saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, it can't attack you on this turn, and it must choose a new target for its attack, or the attack is wasted. On a successful save, it can attack you on this turn, but it has disadvantage on any saving throws it makes against your spells on your turn. Once you assume this majestic presence, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. So, with this ability, this one I think is something that really solidifies this as a more supportive role. As basically with this ability, all your spellcasting abilities not only become stronger, but it becomes harder for enemies to hit you, and making you much more capable of maintaining concentration spells, which the majority of your stronger support and charm type abilities are going to be. And as you can tell from the list of abilities for this one, this particular board is all about charms. It's all about debilitating the enemy forces, or just the rival group, whatever they are, by use of charm-based abilities. And with this ability, even when failing to charm them, at the very least, it's harder for them to hit you and make you stop charming their allies. Alright, so then, our next board is the College of Swords. Boards of the College of Swords are called Blades, and they entertain through daring feats of weapon prowess. Blades perform stunts such as sword swallowing, knife throwing, and juggling, and mock combats. Though they use their weapons to entertain, they are also highly trained and skilled warriors in their own right. Their talent with weapons inspire many blades to lead double lives. One blade might use a circus troupe as cover for nefarious deeds such as assassination, robbery, and blackmail. Other blades strike at the wicked, bringing justice to bear against the cruel and powerful. Most troops are happy to accept a blade's talent for the excitement it adds to performance, but few entertainers fully trust a blade in their ranks. Blades who abandon their lives as entertainers have often run into trouble and make maintaining their secret activities impossible. Blade caught stealing or engaging in vigilante justice is too great liability for most troops. With their weapons, skills, and magic, these blades either take up work as enforcers for thieves' guilds or strike out on their own as adventurers. Now then, you're never going to see very early on that this one is in fact a very combat-heavy board, whereas I would say the College of Valor was more of a supportive combatant, you know, like they're doing a lot of like still support abilities while they're fighting. I would say this one is a lot more just straight combat and very much in favor of something kind of a weird mix between, I guess, like a rogue or fighter, or maybe just more of a dex type fighter. And this, you'll definitely see this as we go into the abilities here. So first off, they get the bonus proficiencies. When they gain the coverage of swords at the level, they gain proficiency with medium armor and the scimitar. If you're proficient with a simple or martial melee weapon, you can use it as a spellcasting focus for your bard spells. Now, keep in mind, I will admit, kind of a weird group of bonus proficiencies. The medium armor makes perfect sense. It still falls in line with how the College of Valor works. But there was the fact that, as far as the extra weapons go, they only gain one weapon, and is the scimitar specifically. I'm not sure what the reason for that is, maybe just more of a thematic thing, but it is an interesting pick. And I can't think of any particular reason other than it is a finesse-based weapon, and considering you only get medium armor proficiency as well as proficiency on dex saves, and definitely more favored towards your dex type abilities, it is good to have a finesse weapon. In any case, however, one of the big things is any weapons they are proficient with can be the spellcasting focus. So with that in mind, typically the bard, as was listed before, they are performers. So their spellcasting focus are their instruments. Basically it's their instruments. So spellcasting focus are their instruments. But with this bard, they can instead have their weapons be that proficiency bonus. So it's not limited to the scimitar. Any weapon they're proficient in can be it. It's just, you know, they gain a new, very decent option. Now, additionally at that level, they gain a fighting style. Now, this one is actually pretty big, especially since they'll be likely be using the weapons more often. So you need that weapon on you at all times, as it's going to be spellcasting focus. Now, unlike a lot of the others, they don't gain too many options with the fighting style. They only gain 2, which once again gives favor towards, if you're going to be choosing this one, you are going to be a dex-based fighter. There is really not much room to be trying to mess around with being a strength-based combatant with this particular subclass. As the only fighting styles you gain are dueling, which is when you're wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain a +2 bonus to damage rolls with that weapon. And then 2-weapon fighting. When engaged in 2-weapon fighting, you can add your ability modifier to the damage of the second attack. Now, with those in mind, both those are very good for dex-based weapons, I'd say. With 2-weapon fighting pretty much being exclusive to finesse-based weapons, as you can only dual weapon fight without the use of additional feats you can take. Dual weapon fighting is only possible with light weapons, which also tend to be finesse weapons, with the exception of a few lighter kind of throwing-based weapons. Now, dueling, I would say, leaves it a little more open, as there are a number of strength-based weapons that are one-handed, such as the mace and then some versatile type weapons. But unless you're multi-classing, you won't really gain access to proficiency with those weapons anyhow. So once again, you're most likely going to be playing a dex-based combatant in this particular case. And the final level 3 ability is Blade Flourish. At level 3, you learn to perform impressive displays of martial prowess and speed. When you take the attack action on your turn, your walking speed increases by 10 feet until the end of the turn. And if a weapon attack that you make as part of this action hits a creature, you can use one of the following Blade Flourish options of your choice. You can use only one Blade Flourish option per turn. Defensive Flourish. You can expend one use of your Bardic Inspiration to cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target you hit. The damage equals the number you rolled on your Bardic Inspiration die. You also add the number rolled to your AC until the start of your next turn. That one I'd say is pretty big, especially if you're going into combat, in melee combat, as, you know, a caster. Having an ability that makes your melee attack not only deal extra damage, but increase your AC for a while, in addition to gaining the extra movement speed, it's pretty big, especially if you're playing it more like a rogue. Now with the rogue, you're able to bonus action, disengage, and get out of that fight. As the bard, you can't do that, especially if you already took the attack action. But what you can do, you go in, use Defensive Flourish, do that hit, gain the bonus to AC, and then with that extra walking speed you have, walk away. Your AC is higher, and therefore you have a pretty decent chance of getting out of there without being hit. let's see, your other options are Slashing Flourish. You can expend 1 use of your Bardic Inspiration to cause a weapon to deal extra damage to the target you hit and to any other creature of your choice that you can see within 5 feet of it. The damage equals the number you roll on the Bardic Inspiration die. So basically with that, once you hit the creature, you basically do this big swing that is also going to do some damage to those around it. Basically, you take this big spin or just wide, very extravagant swing that is just wide. You know, you're just swinging wide and hitting everybody. It's decent, I would say, especially if you're trying to just do a bit of crowd control, especially against some weaker enemies. I mean, you gain the spirit at level 3, so doing that to like a group of goblins or something, yeah, you're going to be taking down. You might be taking down a couple goblins in a single turn, so good on you. Something to keep in mind with that though is that the damage you're doing to the creatures that were not the main target, as far as I can tell from the reading of this, my rolling on it based on what I've read here, is that the extra damage is the damage those guys are taking is only the extra damage. They're not taking the full damage, so keep that in mind. And the final one of these is Mobile Flourish. You can expend 1 use of your Bardic Inspiration to cause a weapon to deal extra damage to the target you hit. The damage equals the number you roll on the Bardic Inspiration die. You can also push the target up to 5 feet away from you, plus a number of feet equal to the number you roll on that die. You can then immediately use your reaction to move up to your walking speed to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the target. Yeah, so this one's interesting. It's like, this one is very, like, aggressive, I guess. Like, it forces you, it makes you move the target, like, away. But then you yourself do still move towards them. So I guess it's more if you're trying to single out a target, trying to isolate them, create sort of a one-on-one type scenario. A good, I can actually think of a very good build to actually use this with. A good multi-class build, actually. Let's say you were doing a Swashbuckler Rogue, which gains, which are able to, unlike other rogues, they are actually able to gain their sneak attack damage when they're fighting a creature one-on-one with no other creatures within 5 feet. So if you were to say be multi-classing as this type of bard and that type of rogue, you could use this to move the enemy away from your allies and their allies to force it into a one-on-one situation, and then you're dealing all that extra damage. So pretty good use of that, I'd say. Now then, at level 6, they gain extra attack, just like the College of Battle. They can attack twice instead of once when they take the attack action on your turn. And then the final ability is Master's Flourish. Starting at 14th level, whenever you use a Blade Flourish option, you can roll a d6 and use it instead of expending a Bardic Inspiration die. So basically with this allows you to save up those Bardic Inspiration dies and not be using all of them to, power your own attacks. Now, honestly, I feel like this particular bard kind of removes itself from the support role, as one of its main support abilities is now the Bardic Inspiration die are now being allocated towards these attacks. At least until they hit level 14, where they, Sentry, as far as I can tell, no longer have to use the Bardic Inspiration dies, but the extra die they get for that is now only a d6, so I suppose it's sort of a matter of choosing one or the other. But still, this is a board that is getting all the abilities, give them favor towards getting right up against the enemy and attacking very aggressively. Like, this is a very aggressive combat style too, as you read this. So with that in mind, this is more of a, if you need some extra, damaging casters or just a bit more frontline attacks, as opposed to more of that sort of defensive caster and support. So basically, it's sort of a matter of College of Valor, I'd say, is more of a defensive. Like, they're able to get in the front. They're like a frontline support who's more defensive. There's more of a frontline support who is very offensive, which at that point I would say a little less of a support role and more aligned with just a overall damage dealer. All right, and that brings us to our final one of the day, the College of Whispers. Most folk are happy to welcome a bard into their midst. Bards of Culture Whispers use this to their advantage. They appear to be like other bards, sharing news, singing songs, telling tales of the audience they gather. In truth, Culture Whispers teaches its students that they are wolves among sheep. These bards use their knowledge and magic to uncover secrets and turn them against others through extortion and threats. Many other bards hate the Culture Whispers, viewing it as a parasite that uses a bard's reputation to acquire wealth and power. For this reason, members of this college rarely reveal their true nature. They typically claim to follow some other college, or they keep their actual calling secret in order to infiltrate and exploit royal courts and other settings of power. So, as far as like the overall base lore for this one, this is much meant to be more of a sort of a darker take on the bard. Very much a spy, assassin type person. Definitely like a lot of criminal backgrounds when it comes to College of Whispers. Schemers and whatnot, Now then, getting into their abilities, they gain Psychic Blades. When you join the College of Whispers at the level, you gain the ability to make your weapon attack magically toxic to creature's mind. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend 1 use of Bardic Inspiration to deal an extra 2d6 psychic damage to the target. You can do so only once per round on your turn. The psychic damage increases when you reach certain levels in this class, increasing to 3d6 at 5th, 5d6 at 10, and 8d6 at 5th level. Honestly, with that particular ability and some of the other ones, this one really right off the bat, when I was saying that like the bards are like sort of the magic cat, like as far as like it's like a rogue sort of playstyle, but as a caster, this one is really a nice blend of that. With this ability right there, basically taking place of what would be like the rogue's sneak attack. With that in mind though, this bard is not a full combatant like say the Valor or College of Blades, where this one is very much, if you're going to be using your actions for melee attacks, you're going to be doing it more like a rogue. You go in, you get a hit in, and then you leave, is the idea. Now then, at level 3, they also gain Words of Terror. When you join the College of Whispers at the level, you gain the ability... Oh wait, I'm reading the wrong paragraph. I was reading the wrong paragraph. Words of Terror. You learn to infuse innocent-seeming words with an insidious magic that can inspire terror. When you speak to a humanoid alone for at least 1 minute, you can attempt to seed paranoia in its mind. At the end of the conversation, target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your spell's save DC, or be frightened of you or another creature of your choice. The target is frightened in this way for 1 hour until it is attacked or damaged, or until it witnesses its allies being attacked or damaged. If the target succeeds on save, the target has no hint that you tried fighting it. And once you use this feature, can't use it again until you finish short or long rest. Now, this ability might sound very familiar, and that's because it is. This is basically a sort of a reversed version of Enthralling Performance. Whereas Enthralling Performance is used on a group in the exact same manner, though it's through a performance, to charm said group. This is used on a single individual in a much more private setting to frighten them. So basically you would be using this the same way you would be using that one, but more to kind of cause distrust between creatures, as opposed to make them charmed. Now the next ability is Mantle of Whispers. You gain the ability to adopt a humanoid's persona. When a humanoid dies within 30 feet of you, you can magically capture its shadow using your reaction. You retain this shadow until you use it or you finish a long rest. You can use the shadow as an action. When you do so, it vanishes, magically transforming into a disguise that appears on you. You now look like the dead person, but healthy and alive. This disguise lasts for 1 hour or until you end it as a bonus action. While you're in the disguise, you gain access to all information that the humanoid would freely share with a casual acquaintance. Such information includes general details on its background and personal life, but doesn't include secrets. The information is enough that you can pass yourself off as the person by drawing on its memories. Another creature can see through this disguise by succeeding on Wisdom Insight check, contested by your Charisma Deception check. You gain a +5 bonus to your check. Once you capture a shadow with this feature, you can't capture another one with it until you finish a short or long rest. Now this is an interesting ability. I've actually yet to see this used in game. We haven't really had anyone play this one, and but it is something that is definitely favored towards charlatans, assassins, and other criminal backgrounds. Like, honestly, I really have difficulty seeing someone playing this type of board and being anything but one of those three types of things, you know? Especially when you take a look at this ability, which just basically seems to kind of favor towards killing an individual and taking on their appearance for infiltrations and assassinations. It is very interesting, though, as most of the time when a party does something like trying to disguise themselves as somebody else for an infiltration, they're kind of just going off of what information they were able to gather, or just making stuff up as they go. That's been happening a lot in the campaign I've been running, as a matter of fact, as 2 different characters have access to disguise self. But with this ability, they gain some of the general personality traits of the person they're disguised as, and are able to actually pretty much completely adopt their persona. The only thing, as it says, the only thing you don't know are things that are, well, secrets. You don't learn those secrets, and as a result, whoever you're talking to probably doesn't know those secrets either, unless they're part of like some cult or something, in which case the other information is probably enough to flub your way through it. And so that brings us to the final ability, Shadow Lore. At 14th level, you gain the ability to weave dark magic into your words and tap into a creature's deepest fears. As an action, you magically whisper a phrase that only one creature of your choice within 30 feet of you can hear. The target must make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. It automatically succeeds if it doesn't share a language with you, or if you can't hear you. On a successful saving throw, your whisper sounds like an unintelligible mumbling and has no effect. On a failed saving throw, target is charmed by you for the next 8 hours or until you or your allies attack it, damage it, or force it to make a saving throw. It interprets the whispers as a description of its most mortifying secret. You gain no knowledge of the secret, but the target is convinced you know it. The charmed creature obeys your commands for fear that you reveal its secret. It won't risk its life for you or fight for you unless it was already inclined to do so. It grants you favors and gifts it would offer to a close friend. When this effect ends, the creature has no understanding of why it held you in such fear. Once you use this feature, can't use it again until you finish the long rest. Honestly, if anything, I'd say this is kind of like an enhanced version of Words of Terror. So, all in all, I'd say not necessarily something new. If anything, I feel like this could have just been a way to upgrade that ability, as it basically does the same thing, it just lasts much, much longer. But still, it's still not a bad ability to have. In particular, I would say this particular board is a perfect choice if your party is lacking a rogue or other very dexterous character who's good at sneaking in and gathering information. This board is going to be the one to be doing that for sure. Even if you have a rogue, that role might be reallocated to this particular individual, with the rogue acting as sort of a backup for that character, hiding in the shadows as they go about these very sneaky tasks. Yeah, all in all, though, I'd say, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the kind of the newer boards that were added, in particular in that book, kind of took too much of a step towards being melee combatants, and I feel like that's really not where the board shines, even with some of those new ones. Now, I would say the Cauldron of Blades does a decent job of it, but my main concern as far as Cauldron Whispers goes is that first level 3 ability where they can do the extra psychic damage is going to too much lean towards making someone think that their board, that Cauldron Whispers board is going to be more of that melee combatant, which I don't see them doing too well, and especially if they're trying to maintain their charm and fear abilities that they're doing. But with that in mind, Cauldron Whispers really isn't much of a combatant at all, I would say, as a lot of those abilities they get have their primary use and utility being outside of combat. So keep in mind, if you choose to play one of those, that a lot of the stuff you're going to be doing is going to be pretty reliant on what you guys do out of combat, I'd say. But all in all, I'd say that's actually a good kind of telltale thing of the board, is the board has so much they can do outside of combat. Like, all the abilities, like most crass abilities in D&D are focused on what they do in combat. with only a few things being more outside of combat, while the board has a lot of abilities that are very focused on non-combat scenarios. So if you're playing with a group that really likes RP, or just you yourself are very favored towards RP scenarios, I highly recommend you give the board a try, because that really sounds like a class that might be for you. Whew. Alright, so that is going to do it for today's class overview. God, these always take a little longer than I thought. So next time we do one of these, once again, we typically, do these morning dungeons every other Monday, just so easier to get some notes together and kind of figure out what topic we'll be working on, as well as it helps me kind of run some more sessions so I can do some more story time based things, which we might be ready for a next one come the not next Monday, but the Monday after that, because every other Monday. So yeah, but yeah, next time we see each other will be on Tuesday night for some more Library of Runa. Also, I got some of my new stuff in. I got my Stream Deck. Not much of use of it today, since we're kind of just on the one screen, but this could be very nice for those games that, whenever I need to do stuff on the side, I typically would have to tab out of the game, which would make the screen freeze, audio stop. Now we don't have to worry about that, because I can just push the buttons on the cool little Stream Deck here, and it just does the things. I've been playing around with it a lot, and I'm very excited to get to use it more. It'll be really nice once I get some more audio type tracks I can kind of do in the background here. I am still working on trying to get something to play in the background, because this is very quiet, and I would like some music, So yeah, we're still working on that. I am not particularly musically inclined. I mean, I like music. I'm not good at making it myself, but I'm working on getting something done. So yeah. Also, now that we have the Stream Deck, I might be changing application I'm using for my model here, but I'm still trying to look to getting a new the model kind of redid anyways, so might be waiting before we do that. But that's a bunch of stuff on my end, so you don't gotta worry about that. In any case, thank you guys for watching. Hope you had a good time. I certainly did. And I wish you all a good day and safe travels. Bye.